Right, we seem to have settled down, so we're going to make a start of things. Firstly, good afternoon and welcome to the fire door inspection webinar. My name's Jonathan and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. But before we get started, just a few house rules. Please do keep your microphones muted. Please be respectful of other participants, and please keep your questions and comments for the Q&A session that we're going to have at the end. Now, just a little bit about Siren Training. So Siren Training is a leading provider of fire safety training courses as well as consultation. We offer a wide variety of courses, including fire door inspections, fire extinguisher training, and fire safety services. So part of my role as moderator, I'm just looking through for anyone whose mics aren't muted and putting you on mute just so it doesn't cause any disruption. Our presenter for today's webinar is Steve Priestley. Steve Priestley was a full-time firefighter, a fire safety consultant, a qualified risk assessor, and one of Siren's training's directors with over 15 years of experience. Steve will be presenting for 30 minutes, then taking questions for around 15. But before I hand you over to Steve, just a bit of exciting news. As a special thank you for everyone who's attending the webinar, we're offering 15% discount on our new fire door inspection courses and services. The discount's only going to be valid for a limited time, so please do take advantage of it today. To redeem your discount, simply use the code FDI15, that's FDI15, when you book your course or inspection with Siren through the website. The code is valid for both online and in-person courses, as well as our fire door inspection services. But please don't worry too much about the code because we'll send it in an email shortly. Now, handing over to Steve, if you're ready, Steve.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jonathan. Just to confirm, because this is the first webinar I've ever done, are you seeing just the screen now, the fire door inspection webinar screen?
Yes.
Lovely. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Jonathan. Welcome to the fire door inspection webinar. Obviously, fire doors are a crucial component in building design and fire safety. They are specially engineered safety devices that, when used correctly, will save lives and protect property. And they do that by keeping a fire or smoke in a compartment in which and where the fire has started. It also gives time for occupants to escape safely or reach refuge, and also gives the emergency services a base or platform to conduct operations. But fire doors are certainly not straightforward. There's installation and maintaining them, and that can be quite complex. And we haven't even gone into the laws and regulations, which sometimes can seem confusing. So let's get started. So a little bit about me. My name's Steve Priestley. I left the military and went into a role in health and safety on construction sites. In 2008, I joined the London Fire Brigade and served for 15 years up until 2021, where I focused my attention on fire safety services. And this was part because whilst in the fire brigade, I specialized in urban search and rescue, and the foundation of any rescue was risk assessments. So I found myself leaning towards the risk assessment side, and I've continued my career as a fire risk assessor. And I'd like to say I specialize particularly in the evacuation processes. Okay, sorry about the blurred image there. There you go. So the agenda for today is we're going to discuss what a fire door is, the types and how we identify a fire door, the legislation. Now, the legislation alone, I could talk for 3 hours. So what I've done is I've navigated my way through and looked at the focal points surrounding fire doors. Then we'll look at the inspection itself. And then we'll look at how you plan those fire door inspections. Okay. So what is a fire door? Well, like I mentioned, it's a specially engineered. It's really important we mention the word engineered, and we'll discuss the process that the fire door goes through. And it's engineered, it's a safety device, and it's designed to save lives and prevent damage to properties. They're a crucial component in the safety of buildings. And you know what? They always have been. But in recent years, since the devastating events of the Grenfell Tower, the focus has been on fire doors now more than ever. And unfortunately, with recent surveys, despite this spotlight, around 85% of fire doors still fail to meet the required standards. So there's different types of fire doors. The most common is your timber frame fire door. Now they're more readily available, they're generally cheaper, easier to fit and replace. They're also a good environmentally friendly option. And they also have a predictable char rate. So for hardwoods, that's 0.5 mils. For softwoods, that's 0.7. So what that means is when they're at places like Warrington Fire going through this robust testing, there's a certain criteria they need to meet. So for a fire door to be an FD30, which means it will prevent fire, heat and smoke coming through for 30 minutes, it will be tested to that. Now,
Steve,
better than...
Sorry to interrupt. Hello, can I just check? Can everyone please mute their microphones or go to a quiet area? If we can't mute your microphone, we will be forced to remove you. Really sorry about that, Steve.
That's all right. Thank you. We've also got steel fire doors. Now, steel fire doors can offer protection up to 4 hours. And if you compare that to timber frame, 30 to 60 minutes, but it's all about the risk. It's all dependent on the risk. Now, steel fire doors you mainly find in warehouses, industrial units, kitchens, and I've often seen them in hospitals as well. Now, a question whilst I'm out on site doing these risk assessments is, can a glazed door be a fire door? Absolutely, because you can get pyro panel glass doors, and they're becoming increasingly popular due to the aesthetically pleasing nature of these doors. Now, obviously, these glass doors need to have a specific glazing fire rating. And now glass, believe it or not, is a fantastic property. It can withstand heat up to 900 degrees, but that is specialized fire-resistant glazing. Normal glass will hold a fire to around about 120 degrees. Fire doors are the principal component of building compartmentation strategies, as well as creating fire resistance to compartments, slowing down the spread of fire and smoke. It also allows an effective evacuation. So imagine you're in a compartment, a fire starts, you leave that compartment, and the fire door that's rated to 30 minutes closes behind you, compartmentalizing that fire and the products of combustion, the smoke and heat, leaving that behind in a room held for 30 minutes. You continue along your means of escape. Now, the corridor is quite long, so there's a subdividing door. Again, a fire-rated door. You pass through this barrier. You've now given yourself an hour's protection between you and where the fire started. You continue your walk. You get to the top of the stair core. In most cases, that stair core will be protected by another fire door. If that, again, is only 30 minutes protection, by the time you've got yourself just through movement to the top of the stair core, you've created an hour-and-a-half barrier just by moving through those doors. But those doors have got to be effective. And the only way they will maintain their effectiveness is through a regime of testing and maintenance. So you've walked all the way through, and believe it or not, and it's a term used in fire safety, that once you're in the stair core, you're in an area of relative safety. And that's why you can even have your refuge points within a building, and I'm talking buildings 30 meters high. A refuge area can be in a building, in tall high-rise buildings. Okay. Now, a lot of people again ask me what's the difference between a fire door and a normal door. Now, a normal door, particularly the older doors, and we refer to them as nominal fire doors, can hold back a fire and smoke and the products of combustion, but it hasn't got a specific fire rating. Fire doors have been tested. Fire doors have been sent out and installed to manufacturer's guidance, ensuring that it will resist fire for a minimum of 30 minutes. A normal door, we don't know how long that will hold it back for. Therefore, it cannot be counted as a fire door. So when they are tested, they're tested to 30 minutes. So you can get an FD 30, which is a fire door 30 minutes, FD 60, FD 90, and FD 120. Now, which door you have will depend on the risk levels in the building, how much combustible materials are in there, and how long the travel distances are required to reach these areas of refuge. Another question I often get asked is a final exit door a fire door? Not necessarily, and in most cases, no. So I'll go to a premise and someone will say, oh, this exit door, look at it, it's got gaps all the way around. But that's an exterior door leading to absolute safety and fresh air. Therefore, it's a fire exit door, not a fire door. And there's differences, there's different specifications. A fire exit door needs a single push bar, like a panic bar, release mechanism to release outside. And believe it or not, a fire exit door can be left open, depending on your compartmentation strategy. So please don't get confused with a fire exit door and a fire door. Fire doors are generally internal. Okay.
Steve, sorry for the interruption. Do you mind just hitting deny on one of your slides? Just
sorry.
a technical thing. Great, thanks a lot.
I'm glad you're here. And finally, another misconception is that the blue mandatory sign that you see on fire doors means that is definitely a fire door. It doesn't. I've been to buildings where people have just put those signs all around the building. Fire door keep shut, fire door keep locked. Does not necessarily mean that that is a fire door. And when we come to part 4, the plan, we are going to, and most importantly, identify where those fire doors actually are and need to be. So, like I mentioned right at the beginning, fire door legislation, it can be a little confusing. So I've picked apart the important elements. Now, the reason it was confusing is that it wasn't significantly divided between non-domestic and domestic premises. It was a bit grey. I hate using that word grey, but it was. So again, after the Grenfell disaster, devastating Grenfell Tower fire, the then Home Secretary ordered an independent review to examine building and fire safety regulations with a focus on high-rise buildings. Now, this was headed up by Dame Judith Hackett. She headed up the independent review of building regulations and fire safety. And it was designed to discover what the issues were within a high-rise building and how to address them. And from that, we've got new policies and proposals specifically related to high-rise buildings. So some of the elements I'm going to pick out are related to fire safety, to fire doors, apologies. So the umbrella, the regulatory reform, fire safety orders 2005, but mainly referred to as the fire safety orders. Now, this provides the framework for regulating fire safety in all non-domestic premises, including workplaces and parts of multi-occupied residential buildings used in common. So the common areas in a residential building. Now, Regulation 38 insisted that regular audits must be conducted on all fire-resistant doors in the building. For standard occupancy, performance, so in commercial buildings, they're looking at 6 monthly, in terms of frequency, 6 monthly inspections. Now, it also states that in busy buildings or busy areas, that frequency should increase to 3 months. Now, I would argue that it's more dependent on the risk. How critical is that door? Is that door the door leading into our area of relative safety, the stairs? So I don't think it goes far enough in terms, it mentions frequency of door, busy areas. It should be more about how critical that door is and the part it plays in compartmentation. So again, from this inquiry, we got the Fire Safety Act 2021. Now, this act clarifies that the responsible persons for multi-occupied residential buildings must manage and reduce the risk of fire for structure, external walls of buildings, cladding, balconies, windows, and for the first time mentioned entrance doors to individual flats that open into common parts. Wasn't previously mentioned. Remember, the fire safety orders mentioned common parts. Okay. Now, to assist you with this, you can go on the government website and look at the Fire Safety Act 2021, and it will give you, and they've developed for you, a fire risk assessment prioritization tool, and that's to do with building height, that will assist you. Now, some of the articles under the fire safety orders, Article 9, the responsible person must make suitable and sufficient assessment of the risks to which relevant persons are exposed for the purpose of identifying the general fire precautions. Okay. Article 17, again, fire safety orders, require a suitable maintenance regime to ensure relevant equipment is kept in an efficient state. This includes fire doors. Article 18, this is about appointment of assistants. A competent person can assist in the undertaking of preventative and protection measures. Again, to the responsible person. How are you choosing that competent person? What is a competent person? Well, it's defined as someone who's had sufficient training and experience in order to assist the responsible person. Okay, so as we're seeing, it's all going back to the responsible person. Article 24, again, imposes requirements on the responsible person and others, including building owners, building managers, in relation to mitigating the risks to residents in specific premises. So what do they all have in common? They all require the responsible person to make provisions for regular maintenance of fire doors, from installation all the way through to ongoing checks. Now, like I said before, I could be here. We could talk about approved document B, which is fire safety, approved document M, ease and access. But all you need to know is that compliance with the fire safety orders is mandatory. So let's now look at the Fire Safety Regulations 2022. Again, all from findings from the Grenfell Tower. So historically, flat entrance doors in multi-occupied residential buildings may not have routinely been considered as part of the fire risk assessment process. But the Fire Safety Act 2021 has removed that legal ambiguity and added these doors as part of the checks. Okay, it's not just the common areas anymore. So as of January the 23rd, this year, 2023, in England, the Fire Safety Regulations 2022 England, and Regulation 10, again taking that ambiguity out of it for responsible people of multi-occupied buildings. It states that responsible persons for all multi-occupied residential buildings in England with stories over 11 meters must undertake quarterly checks of all fire doors. This includes the self-closing device in common parts. So this regulation now is taking those gray areas away. It's telling you, you must check the common part doors quarterly. And it also adds for the first time that you must use your best endeavors, interesting word, to perform annual checks of front flat entrances that lead onto the common parts. So if you're a landlord, if you are a building manager of a residential building, you must use your best endeavors to check those doors. Now, as much as we're taking away all that legal ambiguity, it's left us with best endeavors. Thank you. Which has actually created a little bit of confusion. So I researched best endeavors, and on the government website, this means it is down to you and your team to determine the best approach to engage with residents about gaining access to carry out these front flat door inspections. Now, how you do that is entirely up to you. You can hand leaflets through the door. If you've got a system of emails or contact addresses, you can contact them directly. If you're in an environment where you can get the residents together, that is gold standard. You're getting everyone together, take a register, who's been there, and you can inform them directly face to face. But it is left up to you. However, what's not left up to you is that you've evidenced how you've done this. So I would argue that if you've sent somebody around all the residential flats and posted a leaflet through the door, can you evidence that? How much literature do people receive and ignore on a regular daily basis? Is that enough? Is that best endeavors? And unfortunately, again, that's up to you. It's up to you. So just to confirm, under the new regulation, the minimum requirement is for the responsible person to undertake an inspection of the doors to identify any obvious damage or issues. The good news is that you don't need a specialist to come in and check these, but the person checking must have relevant training, skills, knowledge, confidence, and competency. You are signing off that door to say that it is up to standard. If that is an FD30 door, you are signing off to say, I'm confident this door will hold back a fire, heat, smoke, combustion for 30 minutes. And we're going to discuss that responsibility. Okay, so the inspection itself. So it's vital that doors are regularly inspected and maintained over time. Obviously, depending on how frequent that door is used, the door and its surroundings, so the frame, can take on wear and tear, especially doors, especially cross-sectional doors in a corridor, constantly used, constantly bashed. And if they are more frequently used, do we need to check them more regularly? But either way, the regulatory reform states, old or new, that door has a legal requirement to be checked. So under the regulatory reform, let's just take it in commercial premises. It's saying 6 monthly, or if it's a frequently used door, 3 monthly. How are you going to plan that? Which doors are 6? Which doors are 3? Now, the law states it's about frequency of use. I would argue that how critical that door. We could, depending on, imagine a hospital, a long corridor in a hospital. That door is used by thousands of people daily. I would argue that that door needs to be checked weekly. Now, the level of check doesn't need to be extensive. And again, we can talk about that. Now, How do you inspect that door? You can go online. You can go to the British Woodwork Federation and get a 5-step check. You can go online and see a 6-step check, a 7-step check, but anyone can follow a checklist. I even went online a couple of days ago and found a 30-second door checklist. It said, does the door close soundly against the frame? Yeah. How far do you lift that door? How far do you allow that door to swing? Do you add any pressure to assist that door to close? It didn't say. Are intermittent strips and smoke seals present and in good condition? It doesn't state that the seal needs to be sealed all the way around the door leaf or the frame. Is the edge of the door or frame damaged? Well, visually, I think anybody could check that. And that's a bit of information we could even pass on to residents. Check the door frame. They're the ones using these doors on a regular basis. Does the door latch and engage properly when the door is closed? Again, it doesn't mention how far we're swinging that door. What I'm trying to say is that there is information out there on the internet, but can you justify that because you followed these checklists, that you are fulfilling the criteria, that that door will hold back fire, smoke, and products of combustion for 30 minutes? Again, easily found in terms of information. Are there gaps? Are there gaps around the door frame that are 3 millimeters or more? And again, I've seen it. People can use pound coins. Again, I've seen it where light penetrates through. Is that too much? How are you going to gauge what that is? There's also differences in terms of gaps between the bottom of the door and, again, how that door plays into the compartmentation strategy. Some doors can have a 10 mil gap at the bottom, but it depends where they fit in terms of the smoke compartmentation of the building strategy. Again, check the glazing. Again, visually we can check, are there any cracks, but there's beads around, is there any loose fixtures and fittings? And then the obvious ones, is the door held open, is the door wedged? You would be surprised. If there's any risk assessors out there, they'll understand what I'm saying. You book a risk assessment in, you go to the building and you find doors held open with wedges and, even worse, fire extinguishers. They knew you were coming, and that is the state of the door when you arrive. What's it like day to day when they haven't got an inspection coming? Now, the reason I'm mentioning all these lists and all this information from the internet is because it's not, in terms of accuracy, it's fairly accurate, but can you justify, as a building owner or a person responsible for checking that doors, that you have complied to Article 17 of the fire safety orders? Have you suitably maintained and set a regime to ensure that the relevant equipment, fire doors, is efficient? And I believe, going off these lists, you probably can't. So if you undertake any form of training, you go into these points in detail. So, for example, hinges, how many should we have? Well, most people know you should, on a fire door, you should have a minimum of 3 hinges. Now, if that door is 2.2 meters, then you actually need 4. There's also certain criteria for where those hinges are spaced. There's also, you're looking for leaks, metal fragments where the hinges are. You're looking for CE marks. You're looking for British Standard 1935. You're also looking for intermittent seals or pads behind these hinges. Now, again, these steps that you can get from the internet don't go into these details. And what I'm trying to say is, it's the importance of competency and undertaking some sort of training so that you feel confident in undertaking these assessments. Signs, again, I've mentioned it before, signs don't necessarily mean that that door is a fire door. So the blue and white mandatory signs that we see, and often the signs don't reflect what the door needs to do. I've seen fire door keep locked on fire doors leading to stairs. Okay, so the fire door keep shut is the most common. It's the one that we see that we go through the door and it swings closed behind us. Fire door keep locked are generally on riser cupboards or where there's areas of specific risk, i.e. an electrical cupboard. And again, through undertaking training, you'll understand that signage needs to adhere to British standard BS 5499. Vision panels, again, we've mentioned the properties of glazing, but again, we're going into this in again, more detail, having a physical check of what you're actually looking for. It's surprising that, again, a lot of people believe that a fire door is not a fire door because it has a vision panel. That vision panel plays a vital role in your evacuation process. For example, if you employ fire marshals to sweep an area, before they enter a room, they need to be able to see in that room to see if there's any dangers. They've identified where off the fire panel the actuation or the incident has occurred. Once they start getting closer to that incident, then you start using those vision panels as part of your search and sweep process. So again, checking that the vision panels and glazing are efficient and suitable. Now, door closers. Often, these door closers might just need a slight adjustment. Again, because when they're first fitted, they're fitted and with wood being a live material with hot and cold weather conditions, with aircon in office environments or heating, that wood can swell, expand or retract, which often affects the self-closing device. And often it's only a little adjustment. But going back to what we were saying before, when we're checking that the door firmly rebates or sits into the door frame, there's rules. So you can open that door to 5 degrees to ensure that it fully closes, or 75 mil, dependent on that. And also there's CE marks on the door mechanism. And what I forgot to mention about the hinges, and something that is commonly found when I'm doing my fire risk assessments or door surveys, is that there's missing screws, or the hinge is a complete set, including the screws. Often screws are missing and non-compliant screws are placed in. That is a regular occurrence. And to be honest, I've spoken to some joiners, some carpenters, and because the hinge and screw set come together, often you only get 6 or 8 screws or 8 screws. And so they'll keep a couple just in case they lose some further down the line. It's a common fault that we're finding. Okay, and there's also a timer. That door should not take longer than 25 seconds to fully close. And again, it might just be a small adjustment needed to that door closer. Doors and latches, locks and latches, again, that door needs to fully rebate within the door frame. And often the locks and latches, which through time, through wear and tear, can start to fail, particularly door handles. Imagine you're escaping a fire situation and you go to the door handle and it just comes loose in your hand. Okay, these are regular checks that need to be undertaken. Okay, again, the CE marks. The whole door, including the frame, including the ironmongery, is one set. Everything comes together. Okay, so if you're missing something or a screw needs to be added, you can't just go in the toolbox, find a random screw and place that ironmongery back on. It needs to be compatible with the whole door set. And again, these are common faults that we find all the time. Now, seals, often people think the seal has to be in the door leaf. It can actually be in the door frame. So the seal is the intrusement seal that will expand with heat, closing off that door and making it effective. And whether that door needs a smoke seal as well. and that's the brush or the bristle element that you can see on your screen there in between the white. Okay, and again, that's BS 467. So understanding the British standards and understanding that seal, intermittent seal and smoke seal needs to go all the way around the door, leaf and frame. Here's some examples of some of the step checks. Now, please, I'm not saying that they're not good enough. These are reputable checks, but are they sufficient for what you are looking for? Remember, fire doors save lives. Now, the first one on your left has been produced by the British Woodworking Federation, which is seen as the number one, is in terms of classification, the highest classification of fire doors that you're looking at. So they've produced this to assist and support. It is not this is the checklist, this is all that I need to do. There are very reputable schemes out there. For example, the Fire Door Inspection Scheme. You've got the NFDI, the National Association of Fire Door Inspectors. From BAFE, you've got the NFPA 80 standard. There's all of these standards. Now, I would argue that if your door has been certified by one of these schemes, then might be a good time to adopt these checklists, these regular checklists. And what I'm trying to say is that these checklists shouldn't form the foundation of your frequency checks. Okay. Now, common faults. So this is from the FDIS. So 677 doors were inspected across 31 different sites. 2,506 faults were found. Now, what that means is per door, 3.7 faults were found. 63% involved self-closing devices. 61% involved fire seals. Now, this one is crazy. More than a third had incorrect signage. Okay. And if we're thinking about the mythology of a fire door inspection, signage it should be the easy win. So 230 had excessive gaps. 1 in 6 had damage to the actual door leaf, so that's used more regularly. And 1 in 5 had unsuitable hinges. Okay. So where do we go from here? It's all about the plan, because again, what the law says is how you record and present your fire door inspection is entirely up to you. They haven't produced an official standard document that you need to use. However, there are principles that you need to follow. You need to make sure that it's a thorough inspection. You've included the door frame, the door leaf, any gaps, the hinges, the glazing, self-closing device, and the lock and latch mechanism. And you must record what you found. Okay. You must also have a plan for any remedial actions that you've highlighted. So if you're in a new building, right from the beginning, you get to create the environment that you want, because the installer can give you a certificate of insulation. So this door has been put in under manufacturer's guidance. Here's a certificate to say it. And then from that point, you can do regular checks to ensure that it remains how it was installed. That's the easy one. Unfortunately, we are at a stage where we're doing these checks retrospectively. Now, I am not a salesperson, and so I'm not saying this from a sales point of view. But if I was managing a building, if I was a responsible person of a building, whether it be commercial or residential, if I was a landlord, I would probably be looking at getting a certified door inspection, because what that gives me is it gives me an asset register. An inspector will consult floor plans. They will have a look at a fire strategy if one is available. They'll look at a compartmentation strategy if it's available, or they'll look at architectural plans, and they will identify within your building where every single fire door needs to be, what rating it needs to be. Once you've got that asset register, you've also got a critical register just from that. This fire door protects the entire stair core. That is a critical door. So I'm going to frequently check that monthly. This door is the door to, this door is a riser cupboard that is rarely opened. It's only opened once a month to do regular checks. So I'm now planning my fire door inspections based on the critical nature of the door, not the frequency it's used. However, the frequency it's used is also important, because the more frequent it's used, the more wear and tear will take place. So what I'm trying to say is, for me, as a gold standard, I would be looking for an inspector from the National Association of Fire Door Inspectors, a fire door inspector scheme, somebody undertaking it from the NFPA 80 standard, giving me a certificate for that door, highlighting its critical nature, its number in the building, and any issues that are found. From there, we can prioritize what needs to be done on that door. From that point, I would say that I would be confident to either send the relevant person, that might be your maintenance engineer, it might be somebody that undertakes maintenance on a subcontractor level. I'd be confident now, because that door's been certified, that we can go back to these checklists and check them confidently and competently. Because remember, we're looking at that door saving lives. And I am not going to go to a door with a checklist and say, yeah, I'm confident, without putting a fire behind that door as they do at Warrington Fire, where they do these robust checks. I'm confident that that door will hold back heat, smoke, and products of combustion for 30 minutes. Who can say that? Who can say that until the door's been properly inspected? Now, again, unfortunately, it is retrospective. This should have happened years ago, should have happened as part of the regulatory reform 2005, but it didn't. So we are retrospective, but it still means we've got a job to do. And that job is that we need to maintain compartmentation in order to create an effective evacuation plan in order to save lives. I do not need to mention what may have happened at Grenfell if these new regulations and laws had been put in place before 2017. And I just put this up here. It's a fire door inspection checklist that from the inspection that you get done, you can be given and you can go through and do your regular checks. Sorry, I finished on a big strong point and then I brought this up. I don't feel that worked so well. Sorry, stop share. Now, obviously, this is not a fire door inspection course. The minimum level course we do is 3 hours long, which allows us to go into the specific natures of checking each individual element. So I know a lot of people on webinars feel slightly frustrated that they haven't come on the course and learned how to inspect that door. I believe that if I did that today, I'm not giving you the chance to go away and be confident and competent. And the last thing I'd want is somebody to go away and say, oh yeah, listen to Steve on a webinar, I know how to do a fire door now. That's the last thing I want. I want to just instill confidence and the right path. And if you took it from what I was saying, it's all about the planning. Take a step back, look at what you've got in your building and how you're going to manage the frequency of those checks, and be confident that those doors in the building are suitable and sufficient. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Steve. Very difficult to bring so many regulations, acts to life and present it in a manner that, well, again, to bring it to life really, and so people can perhaps digest some of the information. We have got some questions that have come through. We were looking to end this webinar around about 2 o'clock, so I might only have time for 2 or 3 questions. If we don't get round to your question, or if you would like to email us, do respond to the email that we'll send in a few minutes and we'll be able to answer your question. But just to kick things off, Steve, the very first question that we got in the chat was, bear with me, from someone called Graham, who said, who is the responsible person for leasehold flat with a management company, the flat landlord or the leaseholder or the managed company?
Fantastic question, really good question. So again, with most fire law, the default, so prior to the fire safety orders, people had to get certification, and believe it or not, if you look at these new regulations, we're almost going back full circle, which a number of very reputable fire safety people in the fire safety world said would happen, that we're coming back full circle to this certification process. The fire safety orders default put it back to the responsible person. Okay, so that's a single individual. That means the business owner cannot say, well, I contracted these carpenters to fit the door, therefore it's their fault. No, it just produces too much ambiguity. So it goes back to responsible person. Responsible person should have done their due diligence to check that the carpenter was accredited, insured, and fit for purpose, that they can fit fire doors. So sorry, what I'm trying to say is it remains with the responsible person, the building owner, unless in writing that they have officially appointed a person of responsibility. Okay, so unless that has been officially handed down, it goes all the way back up to the top. The person receiving that responsibility should have signed and accepted that responsibility. Now, and Jonathan, just tell me the question again. Let me see the flow where it's going. So a leasehold property.
Yep, bear with me. Who is the responsible person for a leasehold flat with a management company? The flat landlord or the leaseholder or the managed company?
Well, we're going back to the building owner as the default. So then it comes down to your legal documents, your deed of ownership in terms of your mortgage. It will be written in there who is responsible in terms of fire safety. If nothing is in there, then it rolls back up to the building owner, so the actual owner of the freehold. But generally, in deeds of ownership, in terms of mortgages, it will be stated in there, just like your boundaries of your place.
Brilliant. Thank you, Steve. And before I kind of move on to the next question, we've had a few queries within the chat. Are we sharing the recordings, etc.? We will be sharing an edited version of this recording. It does take a couple days for us to edit the video, so that will be sent in a couple days. But in the interim, you're all going to receive a nice email with not only the discount code, but a short survey questionnaire to fill in that takes about 2 minutes. Just a reminder with regards to the discount code, you simply need to use the code FDI15 when you book your course or inspection via our website. This code's valid for both online and in-person courses, as well as fire door inspections, only valid for a limited time, so please do take advantage of it. Now back to kind of the questions, the juicy things. Steve, just kind of adding on to your last question that you got asked, it's really common for us here to get kind of involved in disputes between leaseholders and freeholders, perhaps leaseholders trying to sell their flat and then freeholders saying, well, you've got to pay for the fire risk assessment, etc. But that's kind of leading me to my next question, well, that was asked, which was our business rents a property from Camden Council. Who is responsible for the checks?
Yeah, again, it needs to be passed down as a legal document. So it can't be verbalized. So, for example, you can't just say, right, you're leasing this property, you're responsible for fire safety. It has to be written as a legal document in order to be passed down. Now, a lot of the questions I can see popping up, there's people in a commercial premises, leased, and this comes back in terms of all fire safety. Now, you might be in a building managed by a building management, and the whole system from the fire alarm system runs throughout the entire building. But you are responsible for your demise. If you're responsible for your demise, your landlord, your building manager needs to tell you where that demise starts, because there's common areas, and where you are responsible. Same with emergency lighting. Emergency lighting will be a system on a loop throughout the entire building. However, what I often see when I'm doing my risk assessments is, oh, I'm sure the building managers test our emergency lights. Well, in actual fact, most building management companies will have a set contract that states legally you are responsible for the fire safety systems within your demise. But again, unless they've written that in a contract, it rolls back to them as the responsible person. So it's all about how official that transfer of responsibility is. Okay, it needs to be documented. It needs to be officially passed on. And again, unfortunately, like most contracts, terms and conditions, we can skim through certain things. And to be honest, this is an issue right across the board in fire safety. For example, if somebody fits a fire alarm, installs a fire alarm in a building, how can they just then walk away from that building and say, well, they're responsible, I've installed it, I've programmed the software? There should be an official handover, So like any system, even responsibility should be an official handover. So all your lease documents, all your rental agreements, all your mortgage rates, deeds of ownership, it should be stated in there who is now legally responsible for fire safety. If it isn't, because of the fire safety orders, it goes back to the responsible person.
Great. Steve, I'm just going to ask you a few quick fire questions because we've only got a couple minutes left. So I just want to try and get through as many of the questions that we can. So I'm curating, well, the ones that I think might be quick fire. Are there any different rules for Scotland?
Yes, there are. Yeah, the regulations are completely are different. So, for example, the new regulation 20 fire safety 22 is for England only. Now, in most cases, when we're talking about the law, it's England and Wales. So Scotland is different. And I'd have to research the specifics for Scotland. For example, last week, beginning 3 days ago, in Scotland, the fire service will no longer come to your premise for a false activation. So there are differences in law depending on where you are, and Scotland is different.
Brilliant. And is there a law to say we have to have a minimum level of training and qualifications in order to check doors? If so, what course would you recommend? Well, we'd recommend our course, but Steve, please, just a quick fire answer to the...
Yeah, sorry, more quick fire. No is the right answer. If you can justify it confidently that you feel competent to check that door, you don't need to do a training course. Simple as that.
Great. And then our last question now is going to be, how about flat entrance doors that are open onto a communal external staircase? Are PCVU constructed doors acceptable?
I can't imagine so. No, I'd have to look at the door, but if that's opening onto what?
It's a flat entrance door that
Yeah.
opens onto a communal external staircase. Are PVCU constructed doors acceptable?
Well, I'd have to look at the door, but no, I can't imagine so. That fire door is leading onto, remember we called it a place of relative safety. That fire door needs to be, it shouldn't be opening onto that area for one. And for two, it needs a self-closing system, and I've yet to see a UPVC door that is fire rated. It's plastic basically, and plastic will melt in the infancy of any heat or fire and produce horrible black thick smoke, which will mitigate your evacuation route. So whoever asked that question, please go back to your landlord, whoever owns that, and ask for the fire rating of that door. Okay, it's really important, and this is a massive push by the Fire Door Alliance, is that residents take ownership of the fire safety within their building. If you don't think it's right, it probably isn't. Please get your voice heard. If your landlord ignores you, I will help you. Siren will help you. Contact us. We'll get a photograph of the door. We'll find out where it is. We will support you. We will go to the council. Having been in the fire brigade, depending on where you live, I could probably get the fire service to come out and get a check and increase the pressure on the landlord there. So please get your voices heard, everybody. Please, it's really important.
Brilliant. And just seconding that, I mentioned earlier, sometimes we get involved in disputes with freeholders and leaseholders. Even sometimes we get in disputes with people who are installing the doors and perhaps those who lease the premises. Sometimes we go in and we see different types of screws being used for each door, sorry, on each segment on the hinge, as opposed to fire rated hinge or fire rated screws. Steve, if you can back me up on that one, please. With what I was hoping to do is kind of bring things to a close actually, and thank everyone for attending. I'm really sorry we haven't had a chance to answer some of your questions, but what we really want to do is continue the discussions, continue the dialogue. So I mentioned we're going to send you an email with a survey. Please do take the time to fill in that survey. It also has a discount code, so please do book either one of the courses or for us to come and inspect. Or if you've got any questions, do respond to that email with the question, and we'll do our best to answer and really open up this dialogue with yourselves. Steve, do you want to finish?
Yes. No, sorry, I've just seen a really good question come in, and I don't know whether I'm embarrassed that I don't know the answer. Mark, if you don't mind, I won't mention your surname because this is recorded and that's why we need to edit it later. But Mark asked whether flat entrance doors need a fire door sign. Now, if I think about the regulations, the answer is yes, but actually I don't see them. So thank you so much, Mark. I'm going to research this. According to legislation, absolutely, that is a fire door. It's rated to a specific rating, and therefore it will need a fire door sign on there to denote it as a fire door. Yeah, you don't see it. So I'm going to look into that.
Well, Steve, if I can set you a deadline.
These things, it's great. Thank you, Mark. I will email you personally with what I find.
Brilliant. Well, Steve, I was going to suggest if I can set you a deadline of 2 days, once we've edited this video, we can include the answer to that question in that email.
Oh, well, somebody's just said that fire separation doors only. Interesting. I love it. Thank you. I wish we could stay on here for a few more hours and have some conversations. But that's why Jonathan's here, is to keep me in check.
That's brilliant, Steve. Really love your passion with regards to fire safety. Thanks for your time, Steve, and thank you so much for everyone to join in. We'll hopefully see you on the next webinar or be in conversation with you via email, over the phone, or even on a Zoom call. Thanks again. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.